You know, one of the most fascinating things about human behavior is how we don't really notice the presence of something until it disappears. When you're constantly texting a guy, you're feeding a rhythm. He knows he's going to hear from you. He knows you'll reply. He knows that, whether he puts in effort or not, there's always going to be a message waiting for him, a conversation continuing, a thread he doesn't need to hold up because you're already carrying it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The moment you stop, the moment that thread is cut, there's this sudden silence. And silence in human connection is powerful. It's uncomfortable. It makes people realize what they've been leaning on without even acknowledging it. For a man, that silence can feel jarring. He might not have consciously registered your messages before. He might not have thought about how often you were reaching out, how consistent you were. But the second that energy is gone, it's like walking into a room and realizing the background music has stopped. You didn't notice it playing when it was there, but when it's gone, the whole room feels empty. And this isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation. It's about awareness. Because when you're always giving, when you're always pouring energy into someone, they don't get the chance to step back and consider what life feels like without that energy. They don't have to ask themselves if they value it because they've never had to experience not having it. Think about it like this. If you go to your favorite coffee shop every single morning and your drink is always there waiting for you, you start to take it for granted. You assume it will always be there. The moment that coffee shop closes one morning, suddenly you realize how much you relied on it. Suddenly, you're craving it, you're missing it. You're even frustrated because you don't have it. That craving only happens when the supply stops. So when you stop texting a man, what you're really doing is creating a moment where he has to notice the absence of you. And that absence can be far louder than any words you've ever sent. He starts to wonder, wait, why hasn't she texted me? Is something wrong? Did I do something? Did she lose interest? And that's when the power shifts, because he's no longer coasting on the comfort of your effort. He's confronted with the reality that maybe he doesn't have as much of your attention as he thought. What often surprises women is how quickly that silence can change the dynamic. Suddenly, he's the one checking his phone. He's the one noticing the gap. He's the one starting to feel the itch to reach out. And here's the deeper point. If a man really values you, that silence will activate something in him. It will make him realize that what he was receiving from you wasn't just casual conversation. It was a meaningful presence in his life. It was warmth. It was consistency. It was someone choosing to show up for him. On the other hand, if he doesn't reach out, if your silence doesn't stir him, then you've just been given a gift clarity. Because you don't have to waste any more of your time wondering whether he cares or whether he's invested. The absence of action on his part speaks volumes. But let's focus on the men who do feel it, the ones who suddenly start to miss what they had. This is where the power of absence becomes transformative. See, desire isn't built in the constant presence of someone. It's built in the contrast. It's built in those moments where you're not available, where you're not handing yourself over on a silver platter. That's what makes someone sit up and say, "Wet, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose her." And this is where many women make the mistake of thinking they need to do more to get his attention. If I text him again, if I send another message, maybe he'll finally see me. But the truth is, it's often in doing less that you allow him to feel the full weight of what you bring to the table. The more you chase, the less he values it, because you're teaching him that he never has to earn it. When you stop, you flip the script. You give him the space to recognize what he had and to feel the discomfort of losing it. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a man who's been half engaged in texting you. He replies, but not enthusiastically. He keeps the conversation going, but just barely. You decide to pull back. A day goes by, no text from you. 2 days, still nothing. By day 3, he's starting to notice. He's scrolling through his phone. He's opening your chat window, wondering if he missed something. By day 4, he sends a message. Why? Because the silence is louder than any of the texts you could have sent. That's what absence does. It makes space for curiosity. It makes space for him to reflect. It makes space for him to realize that your energy was never guaranteed. And men, just like anyone else, need to feel that. They need to experience that wake up call, because if you're always cushioning the relationship with your effort, they never get the chance to step into theirs. And here's the beautiful thing about it. When a man does step forward after you've stopped texting, when he does reach out, that's when you know it's coming from a place of choice, not convenience. He's not just responding because you prompted him. He's reaching out because he genuinely misses you, because the silence created a space where his feelings had room to breathe. So yes, when you stop texting a man, one of the first things that happens is he begins to notice the absence. He notices the silence, and that silence can be the most powerful communication of all, because it forces him to reckon with what you actually mean to him. And sometimes the strongest message you'll ever send is the one you don't send at all. When you stop texting a man, something else happens beyond just the silence. The balance between you and him shifts. And that shift is everything, because relationships, whether we like it or not, are always a dance of energy, of who's stepping forward and who's stepping back. If you've ever felt like you were the one constantly leaning in, constantly initiating, constantly filling the space, then you already know how heavy that imbalance can feel. It's exhausting. The truth is, as long as you keep doing the work for both of you, he never has to. He can sit back, comfortable in knowing that you'll carry the conversation, that you'll keep the connection alive. And on the surface, he might look content, but underneath, what's really happening is he's not being asked to make a choice. He doesn't have to decide whether this connection matters enough to him to put in effort. He can stay passive, and passivity is where attraction goes to die. But the moment you pull back, the moment you stop sending that good morning text, or that "how's your day going?" message, the weight responsibility tilts. Suddenly, it's not balanced in your direction anymore. Suddenly, the ball is in his court. And now the question becomes, does he care enough to pick it up? Does he care enough to do the work? This is the part that can feel scary for so many women because there's risk involved. You might discover that he doesn't pick up the slack. You might discover that when you stop, there's no effort coming back the other way. But isn't that worth knowing sooner rather than later? Isn't it better to see the truth clearly rather than live in a cycle where you're always the one keeping things afloat? When you stop texting, you create space for his intention to show itself. If he values you, he will feel compelled to step forward. He'll feel compelled to close the gap, because men, like anyone, don't pursue what they don't care about. But if he doesn't step forward, then his silence is your answer. And that clarity is a gift, because it tells you not to invest any more of your time or energy. What's fascinating is how quickly this shift in dynamics can change the energy between two people. Picture it. You've been initiating for weeks, maybe months, and he's been lukewarm. He replies, but rarely starts a conversation. He shows interest, but never enough to make you feel secure. Then one day you stop. And within a few days, the texts start trickling in from him. Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. What are you up to? How's your day going? He's suddenly aware that the connection won't sustain itself without his effort. And that's the shift. You've moved from doing all the work to creating an environment where he has to decide whether to put in his share. And here's what's so important: when he does step forward after that shift, the quality of his effort is completely different. It's not him lazily replying to keep you around. It's not him doing the bare minimum to string you along. It's him making a conscious choice to re-engage because your absence forced him to reflect on what you mean to him. That's when you know his effort is genuine. Now, some of you might be thinking, but what if he thinks I'm not interested anymore? What if he assumes I don't care? Let me tell you, if a man truly values you, he won't just sit there quietly making assumptions. He'll test the waters. He'll reach out. He'll want to know. A man who's invested doesn't just let someone important slip away without trying. And if he does, then he wasn't invested to begin with. See, what you're really doing when you stop texting is giving him the opportunity to lead. You're allowing him to decide whether to meet you in the middle. And that's where real attraction grows. Because attraction isn't about one person chasing endlessly. It's about a back and forth, a rhythm of give and take. When you pull back, you're essentially saying, I'm here, but I'm not going to carry this for both of us. You're putting the responsibility on him to show up. And that's exactly what reveals his true intentions. It also changes the way he perceives you. When you're always the one initiating, he subconsciously assumes that you'll always be there. He knows he doesn't have to try hard because your energy is guaranteed. But when you stop, when you create that gap, suddenly you're no longer a certainty. You're a possibility. And possibilities are far more intriguing than guarantees. That's when he realizes he has to earn your attention. That's when he begins to see you as someone with standards, someone who doesn't just hand over their time and energy without reciprocity. And men respond to that. They might not admit it out loud, but they do. Because deep down, everyone wants to feel like they've earned something valuable. If it's handed to them, they don't respect it in the same way. But if they have to lean in, if they have to put in the effort, suddenly what they gain has weight, it has meaning. This is why the shift in dynamics is so crucial. It's not about punishment. It's not about ignoring him to make him anxious. It's about stepping back enough that he has the space to reveal who he is and what he's willing to do. It's about giving him the chance to prove his interest, instead of you proving yours over and over again. And here's the irony. When you stop over-investing, not only do you give him the chance to step up, but you also reclaim your own energy. You take back the time and attention you were pouring into someone who hadn't earned it yet. And you redirect that energy into yourself, your life, your passions. That in itself makes you more magnetic, because nothing is more attractive than someone who isn't desperate for validation, someone who knows their worth and doesn't need to chase anyone to prove it. So yes, when you stop texting, the dynamic shifts. He can no longer coast on your effort. He has to decide, will he lean in and meet you halfway, or will he let it die? And whatever choice he makes, you win. Because either you see his true investment, or you save yourself from pouring into someone who was never going to pour back. And that's the beauty of letting the dynamic shift. When you stop carrying the connection alone, you finally give him the chance to show you exactly where he stands. Something else happens when you stop texting a man, and this one runs deeper than the surface reactions of missing your presence or wondering why you've gone quiet. When the constant back and forth ends, when the noise of everyday chatter disappears, he's left with a kind of silence that forces him to do something most people avoid: reflect. Reflection is uncomfortable because it makes us face our feelings, and feelings aren't always neat or convenient. When he's used to your messages popping up, those check-ins, those little touches of attention, he doesn't really have to think about what you mean to him. You're just there. It's consistent, it's easy, it's predictable. But when that consistency is gone, when the thread of communication is broken, suddenly he has to ask himself questions he's never had to answer before. Do I actually miss her? Was I enjoying those conversations as much as I thought, or was I just relying on them for comfort? And the most important question, what do I really feel about her? This is where the emotional reflection begins. Without the stream of texts to keep him distracted, he has space, and in that space, emotions surface. Sometimes it hits him in subtle ways. He notices he's reaching for his phone more often, checking if you've messaged. He notices he's replaying parts of your last conversation in his mind. He might even find himself thinking about moments you shared, things you said, laughs you had, and realizing that they meant more to him than he admitted at the time. Other times it hits harder. He feels a pang of something missing, a hollowness where your presence used to be. And that absence acts like a mirror. It reflects back to him not just the fact that you were part of his daily life, but also the depth of his own emotions. Maybe he thought of you as someone casual, someone who was just around, but now, when you're gone, he realizes he actually cares. He realizes that the connection wasn't just convenience, it mattered. And that's a realization he wouldn't have reached if you'd kept filling the silence with your effort. It's in this emotional reflection that the truth begins to separate itself. Because if he really feels something for you, that silence won't sit well with him. He won't just brush it off. It'll gnaw at him. It'll make him think about the role you played in his life and whether he's been taking it for granted. And when a man begins to reflect in that way, it creates the possibility for growth. Growth in how he values you, growth in how he shows up for you, growth in how he chooses to engage moving forward. Of course, the other possibility is that he reflects and realizes he doesn't feel strongly. Maybe he sees that the reason he was engaging before was more out of habit than genuine desire. Maybe he realizes that he liked the attention, but not enough to want to invest in you. And as painful as that can feel, it's one of the most important truths you could uncover, because better to know that now than to keep pouring your heart into someone who isn't capable of meeting you at the level you deserve. That's why emotional reflection is such a powerful part of this process. It creates clarity on both sides. For him, it forces a reckoning with his own emotions. For you, it reveals what his emotions actually are based on his actions when you're not pushing things forward. And here's something else that's important to understand. Men often don't process emotions in the moment. They don't sit down and analyze what they're feeling while it's happening. Many men need distance to even recognize the impact someone has on them. They need contrast. They need the before and after. And when you stop texting, you're giving him that contrast. You're creating a before you and then after you. In his day-to-day life, imagine it like this. He goes through his routine. Before, he'd have a text from you during his commute. He'd reply casually. He'd glance at his phone throughout the day, knowing you'd check in. At night, he'd get that goodnight message. It was all so normal he barely thought about it. Now suddenly, that routine is broken. He's sitting on the train in silence, noticing there's no buzz in his pocket. He's scrolling through his phone at lunch, realizing there's no conversation waiting for him. He's going to bed, and for the first time in weeks, there's no little ping of your message to close out the night. That contrast wakes him up. It makes him reflect on just how much of his emotional rhythm was tied to you and whether he wants to let that go. That reflection can stir up longing. It can stir up regret. It can stir up realization. But it will always stir up something. And that something is what separates the men who truly want to invest from the ones who don't. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about punishing him with silence. It's not about making him suffer or manipulating his emotions. It's about giving him the space to feel, to reflect, to recognize. Because without that space, he never gets to that point. If you're always texting, always filling the void, you're not allowing him to sit in the silence long enough to even consider how much you matter. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give a man is the opportunity to miss you. And missing you is what leads him to reflect on his feelings and see them for what they are. And here's the beautiful part. When a man goes through that reflection and comes out on the other side realizing he values you, his effort is stronger. His words carry more weight. His actions become more intentional. Because now he's not just engaging out of habit, he's engaging out of a conscious awareness of his feelings. And that awareness makes all the difference. So when you stop texting, don't think of it as pulling away. Think of it as creating the space for truth. Truth about how he feels, truth about how much he values you, truth about whether he's willing to step forward, and whether that truth is that he misses you deeply or that he doesn't. Either way, you've gained clarity, and clarity, more than anything, is what protects your heart and your time. When you stop texting a man, what really comes into focus is clarity. Because silence doesn't just create absence, and it doesn't just shift the dynamics, it also separates truth from illusion. It shows you, without words, who he really is and what he's really willing to do. And the beauty of this clarity is that it doesn't come from guessing, it doesn't come from overthinking, it doesn't even come from analyzing every word he says. It comes from his actions, or his lack of them, when you're no longer holding the connection together. So many times, we get caught up in trying to decode a man. He said this, but what does it mean? He sent that emoji, but what was he really trying to say? He didn't text me for 2 days, but then he came back with a joke. So is he interested or not? You know those endless debates you have in your head or with your friends trying to figure out what's going on? That's the trap of uncertainty. It keeps you invested, even when the reality might be far simpler. And that's where the clarity of silence is so powerful. Because when you stop texting, you're no longer relying on guesswork. You're letting his choices tell you everything you need to know. If he values you, he'll show up. It might take him a moment because reflection takes time, but he'll step forward. He'll reach out, he'll initiate, he'll make an effort to reconnect. And you won't have to question it because his actions will be consistent. You won't need to analyze every word because the pattern will be clear. He's investing. But if he doesn't value you, if he was only interested in the attention or the convenience, then your silence will be met with more silence. And as hard as that is to accept, that's clarity too. That's you seeing the truth you might have been avoiding. Because sometimes we're so desperate to make something work that we keep fueling it even when the other person isn't meeting us halfway. We keep texting, we keep giving, we keep holding on to hope because we don't want to face the possibility that maybe he doesn't care as much as we do. But when you stop, when you let the silence settle, you find out, you remove the illusion. And that truth frees you. It saves you months, maybe even years, of chasing someone who was never going to give you the love and effort you deserve. It gives you back your time, your energy, your self-respect. Because the last thing you want is to be stuck in a cycle where you're doing all the work and mistaking crumbs for a feast. Clarity helps you walk away from that cycle. What's even more interesting is how this clarity affects him too. Because silence doesn't just reveal his feelings to you. It reveals them to himself. A man who really cares will feel uncomfortable with that silence. It will nag at him. He'll realize through your absence how much he values your presence. And when he comes back, when he reaches out, you'll know it's not because you pushed him, it's because he chose to. And that's the only kind of effort that means anything. Effort born out of choice, not pressure. But if he doesn't care, then the silence won't bother him. He'll let the connection die. And that might sting at first, but isn't that better than wasting your heart on someone indifferent? Isn't it better to face the truth and move forward instead of hanging onto a fantasy that never really existed? See, that's the gift of clarity. It strips away the illusions we build up in our minds. It takes away the stories we tell ourselves, the excuses we make for someone else's lack of effort. It shows us reality in its simplest forms. Either he steps up or he doesn't. Either he shows you he cares or he doesn't. And once you have that truth, your decisions become easier. You stop chasing. You stop waiting. You stop doubting yourself. You start protecting your energy and investing it where it's actually reciprocated. And here's the other side of clarity. It's not just about him. It's about you. Because when you stop texting, you also get to see your own patterns more clearly. You notice how much energy you were pouring into someone who might not have been pouring back. You notice how often you were reaching out just to get scraps of attention. You notice how much you were tying your sense of worth to whether or not he replied. And when you notice that, you gain power. You start to reclaim your standards. You start to remind yourself, wait a second, I don't need to beg for someone's attention. I don't need to earn love by over-giving. I'm worth someone choosing me without me having to chase. That self-clarity is just as important as the clarity you gain about him, because it shifts the way you show up, not just with this man, but in every relationship you'll ever have. It sets a new standard, reciprocity, effort, choice. And once you experience that, once you see how freeing it is, you'll never want to go back to the old way of giving endlessly and hoping for crumbs. So yes, when you stop texting a man, the biggest thing that happens is clarity. You see him more clearly, he sees himself more clearly, and you see yourself more clearly. And that clarity is what sets you free from the guessing, from the chasing, from the anxiety. It allows you to stand in your worth and let the truth reveal itself, because the truth always does in silence.